right? In the first store, we sold hundreds just in the first 2 months of business with no brand. No one had ever heard of Lovesac. We opened a store 2001. We sold hundreds and hundreds of Lovesac hoodies because the name is just kind of sticky like that. And there were some, pithy slogans on the sleeves and things like that made people smile. It's not a damn bean bag. Once you go sack, you never go back. My sack super, whatever.
No, the name is kind of tongue in cheeky. That's part of one of the reasons of your success.
We should have fun with it. My point is, nobody's buying an IKEA t-shirt. They might get gifted one for a 5K race or something, but like it's one you mow your lawn in. Let's go!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the professor, Luigi Rosabianco. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, we're going to have some fun today. Today on the podcast, we've got Shawn D. Nelson, the founder and CEO of Lovesac. Lovesac is a wonderful furniture company. We'll do a deeper dive there. But Shawn also happens to be a crazy entrepreneur. He got the itch and he can't stop scratching. He also has a wonderful podcast, Let Me Save You 25 Years. Inventor, author, angel investor. Welcome to the podcast, Shawn.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
So how's a nice fella from Utah get into the furniture business? Man, that's a tough industry.
I certainly didn't mean to. I made a big beanbag in college because I thought it would be funny. It was actually full of chopped foam and people loved it because it was so square. It would fill the back of a truck. You could take it to the drive-in movies. And everywhere I took it, everybody wants one. And so it became my little side hustle through college. I needed a name that was, beanbag 70s, love, peace, hate, war, love bag, love sack. That sounds cool. And started this little company in 1998 after I returned home from serving as a missionary for my church. I learned Mandarin Chinese, which kind of comes in the story later. I was waiting tables to actually pay the bills and get through school. And then this thing was like an afternoon side hustle. And it would be 3 years later, having completed, a decent sized order that we had gotten at a trade show, had built a factory, wanted to keep going. So we opened a retail store. We tried to sell to furniture stores, but they didn't want giant not beanbags called Lovesac. So we scrambled and opened our own retail store in a mall, and it just exploded.
Shawn, what year is this? What year are we talking about here? Because this is like internet just getting going years, right? This is not direct to consumer yet. Let me throw it online and, buy some Facebook ads. What year?
In fact, this is 2001. And I like to say, we were bootstrapping before I think that word was even really invented. We were living this playbook that is so popular on Instagram and the hustle and the grind and the startup. Like we were doing that as college students, and we didn't have any playbook at all. We had no mentors, no help, even venture capital for consumer wasn't a thing at that time, believe it or not, if you can believe that. So, 2001 opened the store. Immediately, actually, on the success, began franchising and ran off to California to open more of our own stores as well. Quickly grew and ended up being recruited for a reality TV show with Richard Branson, won $1 million on TV, and that helped me raise venture capital with one of the early.
Wait a second. We can't just fly over that. I got recruited for a TV show with Richard Branson and won $1 million. Let's unpack that a little bit. How did that work out? How did that start?
Again, I just had my head down trying to stay alive, right? Like building a business, super tough. Building a furniture business as a bunch of idiot 20-somethings, probably doubly tough. And we had maybe 30 locations scattered over the West, some franchised at that time. Today we own them all, but at that time we had a few franchises we were opening around. And Fox Network rolled through town. They had been recruiting in various big cities across the country, looking for entrepreneurs to compete on what would be kind of Branson's answer to The Apprentice at the time. Some business reality TV show with competitions. And I was like, I'm building the factory in Mexico right now. I'm opening stores. But I took 2 minutes to make their video, sent it off, and it would be a few months later, I'd get this call and say, hey, can you be in London in 2 weeks? You're going to have to, no phone, no connection. You're going to have to leave your company for maybe 2 months while this is filmed to not reveal the outcome of who wins. But you'll be up for the biggest prize in reality TV show history. And I remember very clearly my partner saying like, well, how do you feel? And I said, honestly, I feel like I'm either going to win or I'm going to get kicked off of the first episode and have to go get sequestered somewhere and waste all this time. And both things came true. I almost got kicked off in the first episode. You can find the clips online. I was kind of a smartass to Branson, and he wanted to X me, but thankfully saw better. And I ended up winning $1 million on TV, made president of Virgin Worldwide, got to travel the world working with Branson's companies, even as Lovesac was kind of exploding as well back home. And, wrote all of that and wrote all of that energy into raising venture capital for the company and growing it from there.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the early years in the business, right? I mean, flash forward today, you're a publicly traded company. You went public, stock did great, right? And ran up in 2021. But let's talk about those early years. What made you think that Lovesac was not just a cool idea, but this could really be something? What were the telltale signs?
From the beginning, we opened our doors on November 17th, 2001, that first store, honestly, just hoping that people wouldn't laugh at us. No one had ever seen a giant, squishy foam bag store. No one knew what to do when you came in. Like, do I sit down? But we had the music cranking. We had the movies playing. People would come in. They kind of had a vibe. They were jamming with us, and they'd fall down and just this smile on their face, because a Lovesac is really shocking when you first sit in one. It's super surprising, squishy, comfortable, amazing. And then they want to take that home. And we were making sales, and we were on track to do $1 million, annually out of that first store, which at that time, out of 800 square foot, was crazy. It was like really successful. So we knew we had something. Of course, there's a lot between building a chain and, building a brand and having something. But, and we scrambled off and made every mistake, grew too fast, opened too many locations, probably shouldn't have franchised, wrong model for the business, probably should have raised money
Shawn,
sooner.
hold on a second. At this point, you're still a one-trick pony, right? You're only selling Lovesacs.
Yeah. We were at that, in those early days, we were only selling the Sacs, and people would come in actually and ask, how much is that couch? They point at this couch in the corner. And I'm like, the couch is just there to look pretty. But, it happened enough that it got us thinking, man, if we could just shrink a couch down, like we shrink these Sacs down to 1/8 their original volume. That's how we ship them, which made us instantly internetable, which at the time seemed like a little thing, but of course turned into a big thing very rapidly. And so we chopped up couches and, eventually created Sactionals, which is what you see on TV today. If you're tracking Lovesac, it drives 90% of our sales. We have the best-selling sectional design in the United States of America right now by the numbers. Lovesac is the 19th largest home furnishings retailer in the US, and we sell like 2 products. And so the rest of the home is still ours for the taking. And we built a brand that people love because our stuff just goes forever. The Sacs I sold in college, I'll meet people, are still kicking. Our stuff is just like bulletproof and impervious, and the same thing with our couches. So, one thing has built upon another, and it hasn't all been smooth, right? I mean, even shortly after raising that round of venture capital, their first move was to bankrupt us, get out of franchising, get out of a bunch of leases we signed as 20-somethings, and start over in a humiliating fashion, having just been made local famous on this reality TV show. So, I mean, we've been through the ringer in order to survive and make it here today.
I mean, bootstrapping a physical product company takes tons of cash.
That's right.
So what's one thing that you guys did, and the audience should realize if they're trying to do this too,
Sure.
and they don't have access to VC money, that they can do to be resourceful?
Look, I think today it's easier than ever. Now, I'm not advocating it. I think it's also more crowded than ever, and it moves faster than ever. We had a bit of time and space because things didn't travel so fast. Like look at Labubu, right?
Yep.
Labubu is exploding. Everyone's got Labubu, and everyone's already got knockoffs out there because that's how fast the world moves. And so you got to be fast today, and you also have so many resources available to you. You have suppliers who are like a click away, Alibaba away, whatever you want. You have uh, all kinds of 3PLs. Those didn't even exist when we were starting. We had to kind of run our own warehouse and take on all that expense. All this stuff is just like plug and play ready after the direct consumer revolution, that kind of happened, let's say, from 2014 through more recently, and is still petering off. And ironically, Lovesac took advantage of that wave and kind of couched ourselves as a direct consumer brand around Sactionals. And that's what led to the crazy growth that brought us here since going public. We've 7x'd since coming public as a direct consumer couch approach. Ironically, we weren't born as a direct consumer brand exactly. We were kind of born as a manufacturer then retailer. But my point is, there's just so much resource now. This podcast, my podcast, service providers, 3PLs, Amazon, and then financing. To your
Mhm.
point, it always takes way more money than you think, and product businesses especially. But there's more financing options, available out there. I was credit carding at one point. I had, I don't know, a dozen credit cards completely maxed out just to build our first factory.
That leads me to my next question for you. How do you keep the momentum going in the company when you got the vision, but the cash tightens up, right? There had to be
Yeah.
some sleepless nights. There had to be, some big expendables that you had to go through, right? How do you keep that momentum and drive the company forward?
Look, that's why they pay you the big bucks. Like being an entrepreneur, founder, CEO is glamorized, and everyone, a lot of people want to go do that because it looks like a path to $1 billion or something, and it is, and it might be. The problem is, for every wild success story you see, there are 1,000 more that just kind of bump along the bottom. I'm friends with a lot of them, and they never really get anywhere. And even Lovesac still has a long way to go. Like thankfully we're profitable, we're throwing off cash, we've come a long way. But how do we keep that momentum? A lot of it comes down to me and the team, and frankly, the energy and optimism required to stay buoyant even through the worst times. That's the part that people don't understand about, like, let's say, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It's embarrassing and humiliating to have to go through something like that. But a Chapter 11, you're trying to survive and make it through the other end. So here you are. Imagine this. Driving out or flying to Texas at midnight. At midnight to go sawzall in half some cash wraps that you installed or your team installed a month before on a lease that you now have to jettison because you can only do the work at night in these malls, and then crawl out the next morning, get back to work, and keep everyone stoked on making sales this weekend in the other stores that you're not closing. And it was like I call it my MBA in a box. Like if you want to really learn what contracts do in business and see how things play out, like go through something like that, and then you see how all this stuff actually works. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'm not proud of it, but I'm grateful to have lived through something like that because it makes you realize that you can do anything if you have the stomach for it. And by the way, even at this level, and I hire experts, I am shocked how often some of the best executives that you can hire from a resume perspective do not have the stomach to grind through the long, tough times and deal with the pressure that it takes. And I don't know where that comes from. I'll just say, I probably have some of that, and so do some of the great people around me. And that's the big determining factor in my opinion, unless you just get lucky.
Well, Shawn, on the next episode, we'll record and invite your parents on, and we'll ask a little bit more about that because I'm sure that's where it stems from. But I've got this romantic notion because I want to focus on a core element and mantra of your company. I'm imagining 20 years ago, 15 years ago, there had to be a meeting in a conference room or at a warehouse with industrial designers and engineers. And as they're apt to do, you want to cut corners, and maybe you want to use a lesser product, or maybe you want to use a cheaper wood, or maybe you want to use a rougher fabric. But at some point, someone decided longevity and sustainability will create margin and customer loyalty, and let's forego with designed obsolescence. Where was that fork in the road for your company?
Yeah. We never could stomach making crappy stuff. And we had suppliers around the world always trying to save us a buck here and $5 there and $10 there. And they'll do that. And because that's what most brands want. I mean, of course, we want to do things as efficiently as we can, but it wasn't long. We had this very long run up where, again, I had years of selling these things on the side before it became a real business. And it was so satisfying always to meet people, even 3 and 4 years in, that had their sack that I sold them in college, and it was still like the favorite thing in the basement. And so I think that was the nucleus, right? Like this idea that we make really good stuff, and it would actually be more than a decade later. I put myself back in school because I'm a big proponent of learning and just I'm reading. I'm surrounded by books. I try to read everything I can get my hands on. And I put myself back in school to do a master's degree just because I preach it. I want to exemplify it. I was at Parsons School of Design, and I was reading all this stuff: natural capitalism, cradle to cradle, design for the real world, the classic design books and sustainability books. And that was influencing me. And simultaneously, I had a partner. We were making a big pivot as a brand. This is when we adopted that direct consumer mindset. And my partner said, look, Shawn, you and I go head to head all the time on what this brand is or could be. What is your design philosophy? And here I was almost, more than 15 years into this company with 60 locations. And I couldn't answer that simple question. What is your design philosophy? Like, we made good stuff. We made stuff that, was clever. And I really spent, the better part of a couple of years kind of searching for that. And that's where Design for Life came from. And it's really simple. The spark was, I was looking on Instagram one day, and I'm looking at my competitors, Pottery Barn, Crate and Barrel, Restoration Hardware. We sell $5,000 couches. They sell $5,000 couches. Their pictures from their customers were so beautiful and perfect and well composed, but there were no people. They were just these beautiful rooms, and they were just these beautiful, and they did what they did so well with all of the bowls and baskets and decorative accessories. And here I was still just pretty much selling couches and throw pillows. Then I go to, I type in hashtag Lovesac, and I look at our customers' photos. And man, it is all human beings. It's families and kids and babies and people being launched through the air and dogs wearing our hoodies and, just crazy town. But our stuff's expensive. And I realized at that moment, like, our stuff does life better. And so both real life, babies, kids, pets, dogs, spills, whatever, and life longevity. And so we've refused, since, articulating Design for Life, things that are built to last a lifetime, but can evolve with you as your life changes. We've refused to cut corners. We've refused to cut out cost. I mean, obviously, we're always trying to make things more efficient, but like solid hardwood frame, we're using wood screws. There's like 20 wood screws in a Sactional seat. None of my competitors are even using wood screws anymore. There's just glue and staple. The best ones, the best brands you can think of, do not make stuff like we make them. And I know that sounds unlikely coming from, this original beanbag brand, but that's our attitude. And you have to have, again, a strong stomach, because, when business is thin, as it is post-COVID now, when things are tight, when things are tough, it's easy to cave in and slip under the pressure of wanting to, just discount more, drive costs down. And that's fine. IKEA's built a brand. IKEA has the biggest furniture brand in the world, but we all know the stigma that comes with IKEA. We all know it, and that's okay. They've embraced it, right? It's kind of good enough, and it's kind of cute and pretty.
Shawn, funny IKEA story that
Yeah.
kind of ties into your brand. I'm maybe 26, 27 years old, and I'm living in Manhattan. I buy my first apartment, and as is the case most of the times, you go to closing and they tell you all these closing costs, and there's very little left to buy furniture. So I had a dear friend of the family that was actually a men's designer. So he goes, "I will come with you." His German accent. "I will come
Yeah,
with you
yeah.
to go buy furniture." So we go buy furniture. And my first
Awesome.
instinct is IKEA or these other brands that are more mass quantity. And he says, "Luigi, you cannot afford to buy inexpensive furniture."
I love it.
And
I love
that something gets tattooed to your brain.
Wow.
I've never so now he created this obsession where I have to buy expensive furniture, not because it's expensive, but because I understand his lesson. The lesson was, if you buy a good couch, you'll have it for 25 years rather than something that breaks apart 6 months later.
Yeah. And I mean, so we've wrapped our brand around this. We've staked it into the earth. We carve it in wood and hang it on the walls of our showrooms. This design for life philosophy. We're super proud of it. And like I said, I have couches older than all my kids. They've grown up on these pieces. And by the way, some of these pieces are mated with brand new pieces. They're mated with stealth tech, our surround sound system, that you can add on later. They're wearing their 10th set of covers, so they smell fresh and look new. And that's the magic of the platform we've created. And that gives us now, see, we had the chicken before the egg. The chicken was Sactionals, and we observed it and why people liked it. Why do people like our brand? Because of these things I'm describing. We didn't know, we weren't able to articulate it at the time, but that's why, right? They can add to it and grow. We never drop our fabrics, as an example. You come back 6 years later, apologetically say, "Oh, I know, I really should buy a new set of covers, but I just want to add on." No problem. We got you. We don't drop our fabrics. Okay. So it's more than just the product. It's the operating model that the company has to run on to support this. But with Design for Life, now we have the egg. And with that egg, we can hatch chickens all throughout the home, things that are built to last a lifetime, designed to evolve. And the reason I'm so open with it is because I don't think others are going to do this. And I've observed, we've been at this a long time, and I've been talking about this for a long time. And the reason they're not going to do it is because it's so effing hard. It requires so much stamina, so much staying power. It requires so long even to get the reputation that Lovesac is beginning to have for this. And it usually will get caved in under the pressure of a private equity group who wants to put their thumb on your costs, by investors who want to derail you, or the founder takes a big pot of money and leaves, and then the management team has a quick path to big bonuses for a year or two by stripping costs out and driving profits up and getting super rich themselves. And that's the way that businesses go if there's not basically a founder involved to just hold the rudder, man, and just be stubborn as all get out.
Yeah, I just seen something on CNBC recently. All founder-led companies that continue to have the founder there as the CEO always wind up doing better.
Yep. And it's for that reason.
Most of the
It's
time.
because wealth extraction takes over. It's taken over our government. It's taken over business. Whether you're an executive, whether you're an investor, at the end, I once had, I'll leave you guys with this. You guys are investment minded people. I'm at a cocktail party and I had a longtime private equity friend put his hand on my shoulder. He's a little tipsy and he puts his hand on my shoulder and says, "Shawn, we've just gone public. We're on our own." He says, "I'm going to leave you with the best business lesson that I ever got in my whole career." And I'm excited. I'm a business guy. I read every book. I'm big on management, culture, all the things. He says, "A business is nothing more than a machine from which you can extract wealth." That's what he says to me. And it's like a needle off the record moment, because it's like, okay, now I understand this whole room. And I am not a part of that room. And I'm not saying that, look, we're driving wealth. Lovesac's been worth $1 billion. It'll be worth $1 billion again. We'll grow the company into the billions. I'm certain. I believe this. And it'll make a lot of people plenty of money. But man, like, once that's your attitude, there are shorter, swifter paths to it than the path I've chosen to take. And I'm open and honest about this with our investors, right? And that's what it takes in order to drive something to that end.
Shawn, one thing that a firm does, especially one your size, is you're telling a story. There's got to be a little bit of marketing and branding. And it appears to me from the outside looking in, with your clients and your fans, you've developed a little bit of a cult level culture. I mean, your
Sure.
purchasers, your clients also happen to be your evangelists. I
Yeah.
mean, I see it on your social media feeds. I mean, you've got teenage girls raving about their first couch
Couch.
that they're buying for
Yeah.
their dorm, right? But you also
Mhm.
have mom proud to have their kids jumping on their sofas. Like, how do you develop that cult level culture when you're over in Utah and your client is buying something in Vermont?
It has to infiltrate everything. The culture is the brand. Um, so I know, our frontline associates. I work in the showrooms. I stay in touch with that crew. We are about to have our once annual manager fest, which of course is 3 or 4 days of training. It's amazing, but it's also like a ridiculously amazing party that I think sometimes people stay at the company just so they can come to this thing. But you need these people to stay. You need them to, drink the Kool-Aid and build a career with you and, align to this higher purpose, right? And so it's all the things. I can't answer it even in a sentence. It's having a purpose. It's having a mission that people can believe in. It's building a culture and doing it. And it takes time and it takes energy and it takes effort and it won't just happen for you. And then, by the way, obviously fostering all those things at every level of management so that it can infiltrate and permeate every, so when that person comes into a showroom in Vermont, hopefully that sacker that they encounter, because I'm not there, is going to do a decent job showing up on brand in the way we want, and of course have their, be knowledgeable and all the things. And so it's the whole package, man. That's why I'm so fanatical about reading all these books. It's everything, and that's why I love business. The challenge is myriad. The challenge is 1,000 things all at once, and I think it's a beautiful tapestry. This is my art, right? I'm a terrible artist. This is my way of trying to do something complex and interesting.
Yeah, I think what you guys do great is when I think of your brand, I think of family, I think of real life, right? Nothing is always picture perfect like you see in your competitors' magazines,
Totally.
right? Stuff gets messy, kids jump on the couch,
Yeah,
things get spilled, right? But we can still make it look good at the same time. And guess what? We can always change it up too when we get bored. And that's what life is. And that's what family really comes down to as well.
absolutely. And look, it's not for everyone, but we've done pretty well. Uh, and it's tricky trying to be beautiful and bespoke and up to par while trying to live up to the demands of life and trying to never drop your fabrics and never, we can add styles, but we try not to. And so balancing this unique business model that we've created for ourselves is tough. But again, this is the challenge, and that's why I love it. It's a very complex um, thing that we've endeavored to do.
Okay, so I have some real serious questions for you at this point. Let's go back to your Rebel Billionaire days. Do you still do adventurous stuff like on the show? Was that you prior to that?
I mean, that's why that look. I feel like I kind of stole it. That show was made for me, man. Like I grew up uh, rollerblading and wakeboarding and cliff jumping, and today I ride my dirt bike 3, 4 times a week on some of the toughest, gnarliest trails in southern Utah. Still into water skiing and all of the outdoor activities, rappelling, canyoneering. So I'm a big believer, by the way, in playing along the way. It's one of my little Shawnisms that I preach because had I not continued to do that through my 20s and then my 30s and then my 40s, I might wake up at 48 years old and you know, what do I try and start living now because maybe I'm finally making some money? Like, I believe you got to play in the seams and cracks. You got to work in every seam and crack. And if you don't, you'll just grow old doing it.
I love that. So you guys are still Sactionals the biggest thing right now. You guys are expanding. What do you think is next with the Lovesac brand? Where are you going?
I would love to tell you, but we're kind of secretive about it because we don't do a lot of things. We we have extreme discipline about SKU proliferation. It's one of the foundational principles that I think has made us successful. So we don't telegraph it, but I'll just say, but we do broadly. So look, we've said publicly, our territory and the brand we're building goes from the mailbox to the backyard fence. Given enough time, we'll do all the things, but we're going to focus on the things that matter. Like there's a lot of crap in your life that just, it doesn't matter.
Like the
It's
coaster.
negative.
We don't need Lovesac to design a coaster.
Yeah, it's tchotchke. It's
I don't know. I saw somewhere that you guys were gonna once upon a time do Lovesac lounges and Lovesac Lovesac limos. That was
well
on the
that
show.
okay.
I'm
So
only
that's
joking.
that's
Yeah,
another realm. So first of all, there's
yeah.
the home, and as you can see, we've grown the company. Not quite to $1 billion on couches and foam bags. So there's a
Mhm.
whole rest of the home there for us to make designed for life. And so we'll attack the biggest. And we've said, we're gonna launch something big, about a year away. And so we're gonna launch into a new room, is what we've said. So
I'm
we're launching.
smelling beds.
Well, I don't know what your bed smells like, but you might need to change your
I
mattress
don't
if
know what
it
a bed
smells
smells like.
But look, we will do all kinds of cool things. So it's really easy. Look around your life and say, what would be cool if it could be built to last a lifetime, and evolve with me as my life changed, as I moved, as I grew, as I shrunk, as I, whatever. So that's our point of view. Now, in the longer term, yeah, I think that we'll have a brand as we do now that resonates with real people leading real lives. It will be, already our biggest driver is word of mouth, right? So I think our ability to branch into, let's call it entertainment, hospitality, who knows what, will be there for this brand. A funny nuance, right? In the first store, we sold hundreds, just in the first 2 months of business, with no brand. No one had ever heard of Lovesac. We opened a store 2001. We sold hundreds and hundreds of Lovesac hoodies because the name is just kind of sticky like that. And there were some,
Mhm.
pithy slogans on the sleeves and things like that made people smile. It's not a damn bean bag. Once you go sack, you never go back. My sack super, whatever.
No, the name is kind of tongue in cheeky.
Yeah,
That's part of one
we
of the
just have
reasons of
fun
your
with it.
success.
We just have fun with it. My point is, nobody's buying an IKEA t-shirt. I mean, they might get gifted one for a 5K race or something, but like it's one you mow your lawn in. And so I'm not saying clothing is it. We will get back to that. We've gone out of it because we've focused. But more importantly, this is a brand. And in this category of home furnishings, I don't think there are any brands. There are labels, there are retailers, but true brands don't come from this realm. And I think that Lovesac is going to be that. And that can then do all kinds of things. So I'm excited about, the trick is having enough time and treasure to do it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So here we are. Your journey's been almost 30 years, right? At this point, you guys are continuing to go. What about for the founders of today's era in 2025? What are some things you didn't see coming that you can warn them on to watch out for?
I mean, it is for this purpose that I wrote the book, Let Me Save You 25 Years. So, without even trying to sell my own thing, um, get that book. There are 25 little lessons. I call it mistakes, miracles, and lessons from the Lovesac story. And I tried to be really raw about them, just like I've tried to be on this podcast. Like I try to be really open about all the crap I've been through so that you can learn from it. But let's start with the first one, right? Number one, opening Shawnism in the book, just do something. I meet entrepreneurs all day long who will tell me about their idea. They want to raise money. They have this idea, whatever. It's like, okay, well, what have you done? In my case, I turned off the TV. Well, I had this idea. It's a dumb idea. Like, I don't know where it came. I was watching The Price is Right. I was 18 years old. I was, in that space between high school and college, bored out of my mind in a June day.
Right.
And
Bless you.
I turned off the TV because I had this flash of idea. I drove down to Joann's Fabrics. I bought some fabric. I brought it home. I cut it out. I started sewing it up. I jammed my mom's sewing machine. So I got my neighbor to finish it, put a zipper in it, and started putting crap inside of it. Like, do something. Just do something. I know that sounds dumb, but to this day, that simple mantra continues to drive momentum at Lovesac because no one's going to do it for you. And time just clicks by. And by the way, the world's moving faster than ever. So you got to just do something. I think, it's harder to raise money than you ever think it will be. You need more money than you ever think you will need. And that will be a huge distraction unless, obviously there's lucky stories or there's ways to, there are examples where people never have to raise money at all, but, and that's great. But again, for every one of those, there's 10,000 others that's a major theme and it's really tough. So getting people around you to help you do that, if you're not good at that. And then, the cool thing is, so on my podcast, Let Me Save You 25 Years, I have people like Mark Cuban, Gary V, Gronk, actors, Hollywood. What's amazing is as we all navigate this complex world, whether we're a famous actor, famous football player, or entrepreneur, if you throw yourself into the ring, if you actually do it, if you stop talking about it, take steps, go found the business, go ask your mom and dad and aunts and uncles for money, whatever you got to do, you're going to learn the same lessons I learned. We all learn the same lessons, man. We just learn it through these different mediums. And you're going to have every kind of fallout and problem. But, the other thing I'll leave people with is not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. And I say that with a lot of humility. It's not to say like, I'm great and you suck. It's to say that like, where would Lovesac be without the 2,000 people willing to rally around this purpose and help us do this? Right. And they don't have to have my stomach for uncertainty or pain or that I need in this role in this company. But if you want to play at that top level, and it's not just me, I've got a top team that's the same demands are the same. You have to have a ridiculous capacity for dealing with uncertainty. And no one ever talks about that. That is the part that I believe turns most people to mush, when you just don't know how next month's going to go. And there's wars and there's tariffs and, the market's going this way and your competitors just launched this thing. And you just have to be able to get up every day and deal with that. And that is not every human being that was either born with or developed the capacity to do that. I've seen it turn some of the most senior, capable people that I've ever worked with to mush. And meanwhile, I'm just the dumb beanbag kid that like keeps pedaling. You know what I mean? And so I'm not saying that you shouldn't try. I'm saying that you should somehow tap into the idea and get self-aware about what is your capacity to deal with uncertainty, really.
I love it. Let me ask you this, because you were both the CEO of a private company and then still today a public company. What big changes happened from being a private company CEO to a public company CEO?
I mean, my role as CEO has changed like every 2-3 years at Lovesac. It just evolves. And I used to stuff sacks every day. And then I used to work in the store from open to close. And I started hiring people to work in stores and here I am today as a public company CEO, having gone through venture capital, private equity. I now take on interfacing with investors, which is a whole new thing. I don't have one or two private equity groups that I gotta manage those relationships and optics. I have to interface with maybe thousands, not really, but at least some of our bigger shareholders, and they rotate and they change, and and just the rules of how to engage in the public markets are so different. But I will say this. I think every business should be a public company. I think it's really sad that the regulations continue to get more convoluted to the point where it's both harder to go public, more expensive to go public, and increasingly unattractive because I love the honesty of it. You can't hide anything. You can't, go buy a private jet and slap your logo on it and call it a tax write-off for yourself or this or that. Like you just have to run a really good, clean, well-managed business. And I just think like if there was more of that going on, the world would probably be a better, cleaner, more well-managed place. Actually, there's a lot of waste and harm caused, I think, by people in the backs of things doing things that are maybe great for themselves but unproductive for the world. So I really love
Mhm.
the public company
The transparency.
um, framework. I think it's great.
Yeah. So I want to try something different that we've never done here before. And if you're game, cool.
Cool.
So I kind of put it out to our audience. We have somebody coming on, and what are some questions that you would ask him?
All right.
Right. So I'm gonna pick a couple of them out randomly right now, and let's see where we go to. You game?
I'm here.
All right. We just went through that one. What will be a bigger impact on business, AI or crypto?
AI. AI is going to change everything. It already is. I believe. I think crypto will make it, whatever that means, but it will be a death match. I think that the United States government, for all kinds of reasons, is going to have a very hard time allowing Bitcoin in particular and crypto to become what it would like to become. Now, we'll see who wins the death match, but there's just too much at stake. There's too much. There's too many dark flows of capital and whatnot at stake to allow crypto to take over the monetary system. I think, but I'm optimistic. We'll see.
Okay. What failure or setback taught you more than any success?
What? Phil? Sorry, say again.
What failure or setback taught you more than any success?
Um, I think that one of the poignant things I can point to that I would have done differently was we had success with our first store, and our instinct was, well, let's go open a second, let's go open a third, like, and we were propelled by this fear of the boogeyman, like there's going to be copycat, and there were copycats, and we kind of raced to go do a land grab so we'd be the only giant beanbag store in the mall so that you couldn't get one instead of us. But as I just slowed down, don't worry about the competition, don't worry about the copycats, slowed down a little bit, maybe hired some people to work in that first store so I could stand in the corner and just watch and start to really formulate my conclusions on why is this working so well? Like, as opposed to being so in the business that I was just frenetic, delivering sacks, helping customers, And if I really teased out the formula for why this is working so well, I probably wouldn't have to open 4 locations to have one that worked really good, like I did, whether that was franchise or company owned. And in fact, if all I had after 6 months or a year or 2 years, whatever, were 2 or 3 really high functioning, profitable locations, there are people waiting in the wings to just give me money. They would love to give me money so that their money can grow in my concept. I did not know that at the time. And I know that sounds really dumb. I know it just sounds really stupid. Like, duh, that's like how you do. But I was 22 years old. I didn't come up in finance. My parents weren't in that world. I didn't even, venture capital for consumer goods wasn't even a thing until a few years into our business. And we went with one of the first firms in that realm, right? But today, angels, crowdfunding, VC, it's all there. And all you have to have is a really well oiled concept, whatever that concept is. It doesn't have to be retail. And you can find the fuel you need. And I just didn't know that. And so I kind of did it wrong. I won't second guess it because we're here and we did survive, but I didn't know that.
So what keeps you up at night right now was another one.
Nothing, in the sense that I have, like I said, developed the capacity to deal with uncertainty. And I continue to pride myself on that, in the sense that you cannot, if you can't, if you are so overwhelmed that you can't, sleep or this or that, you don't have the stomach for this. So that's a capacity you have to develop. And I think that's part of the reason I love doing all the stuff I do, because look, when you nearly die 2 or 3 times before breakfast on the edge of a trail on a cliff in southern Utah, moving at 50 miles an hour on a dirt bike, the noise of the day is just not that intimidating. And so, on the other hand, it's like I'm constantly being hurled meteors at my head, tariffs, wars, port shutdowns, Gen Z, labor movements, customer issues, complaints, warranty, equality. I mean, but well, guess what? It's been that way for 25 years. So suck it up, develop a great team that also has a stomach for it, and stay cool and be kind, even in the face of all this danger. And that's something, again, a Shawnism in the book, the capacity to kind of stay cool. And it's not that I don't recognize all these problems. I'm totally into it. I am wrangling with all of them. But by the way, so are all my competitors. So are all the startups. And they probably look at us and think, oh, Lovesac's got it all figured out, and they're advertising on TV. And meanwhile, we look at them and say, oh my gosh, like their last ad was so cool and they make us look stupid. Everyone's, you kind of got to remember that. Like everyone's dodging the same meteors. So just keep your wits about you and keep charging forward.
All right. And last question. My Uncle Mike wants to know if you could lend him some money.
I wish
he knows I won't, so he's asking you.
Yeah, I love it. All my chips are in Lovesac, man. The first stock I ever owned outright was Lovesac. And
really?
Yeah. And I've obviously come a long way in my knowledge of the public market since then, but I'm all in. And I haven't taken many chips off the table because, I'm asking that of my people. They joined, they have to vest, whatever. It's like I want to be in the same train car they're in, and so my wealth, my outcome is all inside of Lovesac. So this is not financial advice. I've told you to max out your credit cards, and, leave your chips on the table, but don't listen to me. But by the way, I love the economic pressure. You know what happens when you have economic pressure like that? You have to make it work. You have to. It's life or death, man. And that's an amazing.
You have to do something. Yeah, I love it. Well, Shawn, we want to be respectful of your time. Thank you for being here. Everybody can go to Lovesac, right? Go out, buy a couch. I'm actually going to go out and buy one after this for my upstairs room. I'm in. But thank you so much. And where can everybody get in touch with you? Where can they find your podcast? Where can they get your book?
Yeah. The book and the podcast, both called Let Me Save You 25 Years. On the podcast, I have just some of the biggest names you'll recognize, having some of the coolest conversations, because it's not an interview podcast. It's very different. So check it out if you have a minute. Let Me Save You 25 Years. And of course, Lovesac.com for all things Lovesac.
I appreciate that. Shawn, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, go check out Shawn, grab his book, go buy a couch. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
Let's go!